Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Fernay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Fernay.
Hey there, it's the Maryland Crabs. And we're back again with another episode. It is Thursday at noon when you're hearing this. As long as Tim pushes the right buttons, like he's been unknown to do for the last couple of weeks. Yeah, sigh. But this week, we've actually got a really cool guest. We shot for the moon, and we got it.
Yep.
We gave a call to the lovely Miss Hannah Marr, who is actually the granddaughter.
Is that her last name?
Huh? Yes.
I'm a Marr.
Are you?
Yeah, my mom. My mom's a Marr. And my daughter's middle name's Marr.
M-A-H-E-R. Now, this is M-A-R-R.
Oh, that's the bad Mars. No, actually, Hannah's very sweet.
Yeah. And she is actually the granddaughter of Tom Marr.
My grandfather was Tom Marr.
Oh, you're such a liar.
Thomas Francis Marr.
Hey.
But spelled differently.
Different one. This is Thomas Aquinas Marr. But he was just a long time broadcaster for the Orioles, and he passed away the other day. But she is Governor Hogan's press secretary. And we contacted her and said, hey, we'd like to have the governor on the podcast. And she said, sure, come on down. And we'll make it happen.
I've never been in. You know what? It's funny. I've lived here for almost 20 years. This is the first or second time I've been like the state capitol. That's horrible. Seriously, I didn't. It was absolutely spectacularly beautiful. I can't believe I haven't done that more often.
You know what I do a lot of times, and again, I've lived here for quite a long time. Is I will go and be a tourist in my hometown. I
never do that. I grew up in Bethesda, so we were like 2 or 3 miles off the DC line, and I went to Georgetown because the drinking age was 18, and we could get into places even though we weren't close to 18. But I went to the Air and Space Museum, and I think that's all, and the zoo, but that's all that locals do. So, I mean, I never went to anywhere else. I've never been to tour, and I'm just as bad as that here in Annapolis. I've never gone to any of the, I've never stopped at the World War II Memorial on Route 2.
Oh, gosh, you need to. It's a wonderful view of the Academy and the Severn River and everything
I found
else.
a great picture on Reddit the other day of that, and it was Goldie Hawn when she was in like 1967 or 66. And they took a picture because she's from Silver Spring.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's a picture of her, like she was probably 16, 17
posing,
years old.
propping up with the knee.
Yeah, it was awesome.
I've seen it there. I'll show you a
so
picture.
Goldie Hawn's gone done more touristy stuff in my town than I have. And she grew up around me.
There you go. Well, hey, you've got one up on her.
But it was awesome though. And the governor's office was fantastic too.
Mm-hmm. Yep. But yeah, no, do some touristy stuff when the weather breaks again. Do it. Go out on the Miss Anne for Watermark or the Harbor Queen. Just sort of see what it is.
I've seriously been on the Naval Academy campus 3 times or 4 times.
Again, take the walking tour on that. Visit Annapolis. Go check them out and see what they've got and do a walking tour. It's amazing. And the city actually published. We're getting real off track here, but that's okay.
I don't care.
The city.
There's no rules to this. We don't have any bosses.
The City Arts and Public Places Commission published a wonderful book. I don't want to say it's hardbound, but it's a professionally published book. It's softbound, but it's maybe 70 pages, and it's all of the outdoor art all through a town. It's got sculptures, it's got murals, it's got the chickens that were all over the town, and what they meant, where they are, what the story is. The big one that Sally Comport did, the big giant ones over on, like Stan and Joe's, this big, huge.
Oh yeah, I helped put those up there.
Yeah,
I did honestly. When my previous position, I was
back in your days.
But, yeah, back in my days.
But yeah, no, it's definitely it's kind of neat to be a tourist in the town because we've got a really fascinating town.
We went to my daughter and I did some Christmas shopping over the weekend, so we were downtown and we went to the museum store and we went to the second floor because there's more stuff up there. But the second floor, there was only one room that had anything for sale. And the rest was
the
museum, and then you go to the third floor, and there's a continuation of that museum. It's like the slave museum, and it's pretty interesting. And I forgot that was there. You forget all that stuff there. You take it for granted. You really do.
All right, I'll throw out another museum for you. Banneker Douglas.
Yeah, I've never been. I walked by. That's right from. I've been across the street at the bar.
Go. Yeah. Yep.
And in that bar, I've been there when the ghost tour walks in, and it's just all these people, and they're all getting their drinks, and it's a ghost tour.
Yeah, the Banneker Douglas Museum is also really good, but we digress. Hey, our uploads, downloads, listens are great.
Yes, they are.
And thank you to everybody who's listening who decided to do this, to give us a shot and listen to us. And we appreciate you telling all of your friends and sharing and rating us on iTunes and Google Play.
Yeah, it's been great. This has been, and actually it makes it easier for us to get guests. And again, if you have guests, and we've kind of, like John said, we just shot for the moon, and we got the speaker, we got the governor. But I mean, there's other people that we want to talk to around Maryland. We want to make this is going to be Maryland. We have on tap. We're going to talk to a waterman who's going to tell us what things are like out on the water and what the economy is for that. I guess it's almost a dying breed at this point. But I'd love to get up there and talk to like a mayor of a small town, like in Oakland, just because people forget that we have these little corners of the state that I'd love to talk to people. So if you have any suggestions for people, interesting people to talk to, we genuinely love to hear them, because we don't want to get stuck into a political rut either, because there's a lot of really interesting stories, like we did with Mr. Keys, who was the 95-year-old World War II vet.
Oh my gosh, he was fascinating.
He was awesome. And those are the stories we'd like to kind of uncover.
If you didn't listen to that one, go back and find that one. That's Mr. Keys. That was a special bonus episode on Veterans Day.
On Veterans Day, which is also Election Day. It
wasn't Election Day.
Yeah, it was.
No, it wasn't.
It was.
No, it wasn't.
It was.
No.
I just got back from voting, and I went over to his place and I interviewed him. He just
you
voted
recorded
too.
it on Election Day.
Well, yeah.
But it aired on Veterans Day.
That's the production side. I don't deal with that.
Yeah.
I'm the artist.
Yeah. So you think. But seriously, there's plenty of ways to follow us, and you should. You've got Twitter is at MD Krabs Podcast.
Tis.
Email is info@themarylandkrabs.com. And of course on Facebook you can find us at the Maryland Krabs, and that would be both as a page and as a group.
Yep. We're experimenting with that. That's an A/B test.
And we're trying to figure that out.
We just want to see which one works better. So we may keep one, but in the meantime, just come on in. Thanks to everyone who's sharing. Also, there's been a lot of shares on Facebook, and we appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So this has been great. So again, the important part is you subscribe. So it's great to listen to this on the webpage, but as long as you subscribe, then that means that you're going to get delivered just week after week. It's the gift that keeps on giving. And It's Christmas. So give this as a gift. And by give it as a gift, just tell someone to subscribe. And that should count. And
you can tell them that it costs you, $20 a month, and we'll back you up on that.
We're liars.
We'll back you up on that. That's no problem. But anyhow, do you think we probably should get into it?
Yep.
We spoke with Governor Hogan.
It was very cool. It was great being in the office. The office was not. First of all, the office overlooks Maryland Ave, like completely. So if you're standing on Maryland Ave looking at the State House, you're looking at his office, and there's this tempered like leaded window, so it was kind of it wasn't this clear view through. But so if you're wondering where the governor is, he's right through there.
Right.
And it was like the dean's office. I told him it was just this huge room with like 20-foot ceilings, and
it's beautiful. It was a section of the State House that I've never been in.
Yeah, he had a big box. What do you call that? A shadow box when you have stuff inside. So it was a big shadow box. It was probably 4 feet tall by 4 feet wide, and it had a guitar in it. And that was a guitar he got from Travis Tritt, right? No. Travis Tritt. Kenny Rogers.
No.
No, hold on. Don't tell me. Garth Brooks.
No.
Wayne and Garth.
No.
John Wayne.
No.
All right, go.
No.
So you don't know either.
Faith Hill's husband.
Oh, Tim McGraw.
Tim McGraw.
I'm ashamed I know that too. I know like 2 country songs. I like it. I like Kenny Rogers. Yeah. But yeah, he got a guitar from Ken. So on his wall he had this big shadow box with a guitar from Tim McGraw that he got when he was cancer free or when he went through his treatment. He had pictures of himself with everybody, including the Obamas, and so it was
the Obamas and some
memorabilia
from his father when his father served in the state legislature or in the he was a congressman.
And I'll say this too. I mentioned this to you. Do you know what's amazing to me? As we went to the second floor of the State House. What kind of amazed me is that everybody who we encountered and who guided us through were all so young. They're all these ridiculously attractive and very crisp business-like people in their late 20s, that were guiding us from office to office.
Then we schlep in off the street.
I know. I did feel underdressed now, but they were just super efficient and super. I mean, that state government is just you think of it as older, but
I think that's we're just getting a little bit older. We see them as younger, and I mean,
they're in their late 20s.
Well, it's the up and coming generations, the ones that have the finger on the pulse of the up and coming people, and that's what Governor Hogan has to react
I'm
to.
not being funny. It actually makes me think I just kind of squandered my 20s because you hear people with their eye on the ball saying, "All right, I'm going to go somewhere and there they are, just jumping from position to position and hobnobbing with governors and
Right. Well,
and I was living in Albuquerque doing news.
yeah. What's a governor? He's just a guy. He puts his pants on the same way you and I do. But the cool thing we got was Hannah has said that she'd hook us up with the tour of the take us up on the dome.
Oh yeah, but I think she was being polite.
No, we're gonna put it on the podcast and we're gonna put pressure on her.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
But
So
she smiled and was like, "Oh sure," and I'm like, "Yeah,
sure,
not."
sure, yeah. No, it's gonna happen.
But
It's gonna happen.
But anyway, it was a great interview. He was very open. He was very engaged. Not that we didn't put him into a corner at all, but I mean, he was a really good guy, and we really appreciate him having us in.
It is, and then he took us out for shots afterwards, so it was cool.
It was cool, that part.
Yeah.
So
let's get to it.
all right, here we go. Governor with interview Hogan.
No, that's not right.
I know.
We're here with Governor Hogan in the State House, in his office. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for joining us.
It's a little bit cold out today. Winter has come in with a...
A little bit cold, yeah. We have the state employees open house today, and sometimes it gets a long line out there in front of the State House. So I'm hoping people aren't freezing to death.
That is true. Well, I'll tell you, we turned around and we thought we'd lead in with a real zinger.
Okay.
And a real gotcha.
That's good. Let's start off with the gotcha.
We dug deep, but we couldn't find anything.
Oh, darn it.
So
You seem to be fairly popular. Well,
Is that the gotcha?
well, not the the Democratic legislature, maybe not that's popular, but other than that, your ratings are pretty spectacular.
Well, I'm just pleased with the fact that about 3/4 of the people in Maryland seem to be happy with the job that we're doing. And, that makes me feel good because we've been working hard at it. And this is a job approval rating. It's not really a popularity rating. This is not, do you like the governor, but do you approve of the job?
It's still nice to be liked.
It's very nice. It's
like my popularity rating in my household right now is pretty low.
well, in my household, I don't think I'm at the same numbers, and I think it seems like the general public in Maryland agrees with me 76% of the time. But in my house, I'm lucky to get to 50.
Not even. I'd kill for 50, to be honest with you.
Yeah, but it is. I don't like to focus on those things, but it is nice to know that people appreciate what we're doing and that they agree with us. And they're the highest numbers, job approval numbers in Maryland history, and it's the highest of any governor in the country.
With a Republican governor in a Democratic state, not just a Democratic state, but
The
probably,
bluest state in the country.
Right. So you got to at night kind of grin a little bit. Go, all right,
there's
that's
a
not bad.
well-deserved pat on the back.
I don't
there,
know what
think.
it is, but I say I must be doing something right, and I hope I can just keep doing whatever it is that.
Now we're saying that too. That you actually we were saying this when we talked to Speaker Busch the other day. That you kind of planted your flag in what would traditionally be Democratic concepts and ideals, like for example the Leave Act, the paid leave legislation, which is not something you'd see from a Republican administration.
Well, I don't really fit in one box, and I think that's what people like. I've never held elective office before. So I don't know what the rules are for what you have to do in this party or that party.
Great. I've never held elected office before, but I am the most popular governor.
But I mean,
you hit the ground running on that.
I haven't spent my career as a politician. I spent 30 years as a small business owner, and I'm very pragmatic. I'm not very partisan, and I'm proud to be a Republican, but I make decisions on every single issue based on whether I think it's good for the people of Maryland. And sometimes that might be, I don't care which side of the aisle the ideas come from. I'm really looking for common sense, bipartisan solutions to the problems that face Marylanders. And, I started the largest nonpartisan group in Maryland history called Change Maryland 6 years ago. And it was Democrats, independents, and Republicans who were fed up with the direction of our state. We were focused on economic issues and jobs and growing our economy, and that's what we've been doing. But I actually had more Democrats and independents. There's only 26% of the state is Republican, and with a 76% approval, I guess there's 50% of something else that also likes what we're doing.
Right.
Well, you definitely springboarded off of the Change Maryland.
Yes.
It just really good. That's my status. That's my tactic for running for mayor of Annapolis. I've got all Annapolis, and I'm going to springboard off that. I'm going to change it into a...
That sounds good. You need to...
No, but I mean, one of the things you said is that you're not partisan, and I think and not holding elective office and not knowing, I don't want to say not knowing what you're doing, but I mean, coming into this with a certain learning curve, I think is really boded pretty well from you. I mean, you look at people who are just looking for change, and I think we see that on the national election. And I mean, and to sort of dissuade any, Governor Hogan's a partisan hack. I mean, you were the first one that was like, I'm going to distance myself from President-elect Trump. I mean, you put your support.
Well, I didn't distance myself from President-elect Trump. I distanced myself from candidate Trump.
Right.
But now I'm going to be supportive. I mean, of the president as much as I can, as I was with the last administration. I have a certain respect for the office, and he's the choice of the voters. But in some respects, there were similarities. A business guy, an outsider who's never held office, who's focused on change, and wants to kind of come in and turn things around.
So you're going to build a wall along Virginia. So
yeah, but the personalities is where it's different, and then I think that's
your I say a moral compass, if you will, for lack of a better term.
Well, but it's also, I don't think it's anything different than the rest of a lot of the Republicans. I mean, it wasn't a unified Republican Party any more than it was a unified Democratic Party, for that matter. But I mean, I think that right now the dust is going to settle, but I think they're kind of redefining a lot of the issues.
Time will tell how it all shakes out. I said a couple of times I didn't think that either party put up the strongest possible candidate for president, but it is what it is. We can't control what happens in elections, and I congratulated the incoming president-elect, and spent quite a bit of time, maybe an hour and a half, with the incoming vice president, Mike Pence, who's a good friend of mine. I know many of the people that have just been appointed to the cabinet. I know the chief of staff very well. So, look, I had a great relationship with the Obama administration, worked together with them on a number of things, and we're going to have a great relationship with this administration as well.
Do you think this means any change to Maryland? Like, he's made some he's had some talk about basically cutting down the size of government and reducing the size of government by attrition and having hiring freeze in a state that relies so much on federal employment and federal contracts and lobbying. Do you see any impact on Maryland moving forward?
Well, I hate to speculate on what might happen. I mean, he's not even the president yet, and there's a lot of rhetoric and a lot of talk, but we'll see what policies actually are implemented. It's sort of a double-edged sword. Maryland has been very lucky that we've received, we have more federal employees than any other state per capita, and we receive a lot of federal government largesse, which, is great for us. But in the past, we had no balance in our economy, and we've been working really hard on making sure that we can create a private sector and that we can grow jobs. We've added 72,000 private sector jobs since I've been governor, and under the previous 8 years, we lost 8,000 businesses and 100,000 jobs. We were doing fine with federal jobs, but not with businesses. Now it's just the opposite. Last year was the best year for Maryland business in 15 years, the best year for job growth in 15 years. Our overall state economic performance went from 49th out of 50 states to number 11, which is the greatest economic improvement of any state in the country. We've got 4.2% unemployment, better than most people in the country. So there could be some impact with if that actually happens. With the federal government may be slimming down a little bit, but hopefully we can grow our private sector and create more jobs.
I want to talk, sort of tying on that. You're not a Republican, you're bipartisan.
Well, I am a Republican.
Well, you're a Republican,
I'm a
but
lifelong Republican.
You're a bipartisan.
Yeah.
The bill that you're looking to introduce, as far as the mandatory sick time.
Yes.
And on the surface, that sounds like a very O'Malley-ish thing. I know on WR&R we joked about it. Said, like, what, O'Malley break into Government House and tie him up in the basement or something again? Because, and I mean,
well, so it's the legislature and mostly Democrats have been pushing and working on this for 5 or 6 years, I think, and they've been unable to reach any kind of a compromise, mostly because they tried to go too far with this bill. And if you say the government should force every single business to provide health care, most people do not agree with that.
Right.
If you say, would it be better to have common sense health care that doesn't hurt small businesses and doesn't cost us jobs? An overwhelming majority, like 76% of the people, agree with that. So I came up with a proposal that was common sense, that would not hurt small businesses and wouldn't cost us jobs. So our bill, we thought was a compromise that that the Democrats could go for, but that the Republicans could also live with, and that the business community, for the most part, is supporting. So this is something that Maryland Chamber of Commerce and many other business organizations are in favor of this compromise proposal that we put forth. Basically, large businesses, as defined by the federal government for Family Leave Act and for the Affordable Care Act, if 50 employees or more, they need to provide the sick leave, but not for 5 days of sick leave, which is different than some proposals, or like give them 2 months of sick leave right after they work the first day in a small business with one employee. I mean, it's crazy.
Sure.
That would put people out of business.
And then for smaller businesses,
we said, no, you can't make them do that, and it could cost us more small businesses and more jobs. But we would like to provide incentives for them because it would be good as long as it didn't hurt them. So we provide tax incentives for small businesses who do provide it. It doesn't cost them money. They get to write it off on their taxes, and it's up to $20,000. And so many small businesses already do. The ones who don't, we're not forcing them to. But if they decide they want to provide those benefits, we're going to give them a tax break for it.
I mean, I wonder how many large businesses, over 50 employers in Maryland, do not provide
Very
it.
few.
I was going to say it's probably a single-digit percentage, if anything.
Not sure.
So, but yeah, no, I mean,
so it's something that you usually hear Democrats talking about. You can be fiscally responsible and pro-business and still care about people and come up with common sense things that could help some folks in the state. And that's, I think, one of those examples.
So do you think that the business climate in Maryland has improved since you've come in? I mean,
it's improved dramatically.
We're Annapolis guys, and that's the biggest. I don't know how much you pay attention to like city politics, or if you watch the meetings and in your box.
I got to tell you, I don't have a lot of time for that. But I hardly ever get to see TV, and if I do, it's probably not the city of Annapolis. Council meetings, it's probably
it's like going to watch a
sports.
minor league game. But I just think there's been a lot of criticism, at least locally, about business climate for years. And that's that's something that they really have to work on. And oftentimes, you don't think about the business climate of Maryland as a whole, because it depends on. I mean, there's a huge difference between Montgomery and Prince George's County and Cumberland. Or Salisbury.
Well, so the business climate in Maryland was terrible, which is, as a small business guy, it frustrated me so much that I decided to run for governor. After losing 8,000 businesses and 100,000 jobs, and being 49th out of 50 states, as a lifelong Marylander who loves the state, that really broke my heart, really ticked me off. There was a poll done while I was running for governor against the kind of incumbent administration that said more than 2/3 of all Marylanders thought Maryland was heading in the wrong direction. And a Gallup poll said nearly half of all Marylanders wanted to leave the state because we had 43 taxes in a row, had taken $10 billion out of our economy, out of the pockets of struggling Maryland families and small businesses, crushed our economy, made people want to leave the state. And so I said, I'm going to try to do something about it. And we have. So now 76% of the people approve of where we're heading, and that we're now 11th rather than 49th in overall economic performance. And we had the best year for business in 15 years and the best job growth in 15 years. We went from losing 100,000 jobs to gaining 72,000. And we went from doubling our unemployment to shrinking it all the way down to below the rest of the country. So yes, it's the business climate in Maryland is improving. We haven't fixed everything yet, and there's still a drag from the national economy that we have headwinds that we're up against. But we're making much more progress than almost all of our competitors across the country.
Another thing that you're hot on this year is Busch, and that is, I don't want to call it a voucher system, but it's scholarships for private school education, sub-secondary education. Is that in any way taking away you're proposing to increase it from $5 million to $10 million, but is that in any way taking away from public school funding?
No, actually it provides for more public school funding because the public schools we're paying much more per pupil to educate them. So poor kids that leave the system for a small scholarship to go to the school of their choice to get out of the terrible school in their neighborhood. It leaves more money in the public schools for the other kids, and it helps with the per pupil spending. But we had, education is our number one priority. We put record funding in education 2 years in a row, K through 12. No other governors ever invested as much.
You were a DeMatha guy, right?
I went to DeMatha.
Oh, good council guy.
Well, I won't hold that against you.
We can say a rosary together after this.
Yeah, and Lieutenant Governor is a John Carroll guy, as was
Catholic
Michael
Mafia
Steele.
here.
Yeah, so we're joking around that the previous governor went to Gonzaga, I went to DeMatha, and both Boyd Rutherford and Michael Steele, 2 lieutenant governors, went to Carroll. So we said,
That sounds like a Thanksgiving football team to me.
yeah, exactly, exactly. But on this thing, actually, last year we had a program called Boast, which was a Democratic senator was pushing for years, and that was to provide tax credits for both public and private schools. For businesses that want to donate to those schools, they would get a tax break. It failed for 10 years in a row. We pushed for it. It was supported by every private school. It's overwhelmingly supported by almost everybody. Particularly, it's about 80% of the people in Baltimore City like it, and 80% of the people in Prince George's County like it. It's helping poor kids, giving them an opportunity, because I believe every single kid deserves a world-class education regardless of what neighborhood they happen to grow up in. It didn't pass, and so Speaker Mike Busch actually came up with this legislation and changed it because the teachers union didn't like our tax proposal, and this is now giving scholarships, $5 million worth of scholarships to kids. We went along with it as a compromise, but this was a Democratic idea. It wasn't my idea. It was supported by Mike Miller in the Senate and Mike Busch in the House, and they passed it overwhelmingly. Democrats voted for it, and so did Republicans. It's worked so well. There were 5,000 applications for these scholarships, and many qualified and deserving poor families that needed the help, and I think 3,000 people did get scholarships. It's worked fabulously, and we wanted to gradually increase it over 3 years from the $5 million it is to 10, so we can help more poor kids.
Great. All right, fun question. You got some perks in the office, right? Some nice perks.
Is
the government house nice?
Government house is pretty nice.
A little bit better than Edgewater?
Actually,
but Edgewater's home.
I'll tell you what, it's such an honor to be able to be the temporary residence of this historic.
People complain about public housing. I don't think it's that bad.
I do get public housing, which is terrific. It's the nicest public housing I've ever seen, other than the public housing in Pennsylvania Avenue in D.C. It's pretty nice. It's an honor to be there, and it's a historic home, and it's beautiful.
Everything I know about living
But my house in Edgewater was in the woods, on the water, and it was very quiet. My wife and I were empty nesters, and now we have 30 people running around the house, and tours going on, and parties and events there every night.
Does that drive you crazy sometimes? I mean,
it's a little bit. It's not the most comfortable place, but it's we're honored to be there, and it's an incredible.
Do you Netflix and chill? Do you just sometimes just go up into the upper room, just turn on Netflix and binge watch House of Cards or something?
I would love to do that. Believe it or not, I have never even seen an episode, and I keep saying I have to catch up on all these seasons, but I have no time. So rarely do I ever get home. We're working every night, and if I am there, there's some function there.
Right.
But if I get a chance to watch TV, it's usually I'm watching a game of some kind, or maybe I'll catch a movie. But the series are just too much because I'll miss them. I'll see one and then never see another one.
Everything I know about the living in a governor's mansion comes from Benson.
Do you ever get back to Edgewater to escape?
Actually, I just sold my house about a month ago. So because we had it there for 2 years, and I never spent a single night there.
Okay.
I love the house there, but we just never got away. It's a little bit difficult because the state police executive protection has their headquarters in the basement of the government house, and these guys would have to go to my private house and sit in the driveway all night, and it's just.
I didn't know if there was like a little, like a Camp Larry over in Edgewater.
I would like to, but now I'm homeless. I'm only living in the public housing, and
you got another feet?
If they ever kick me out of this place, I've got to find maybe a tent somewhere or something.
So you got another 6 years?
I don't know, at the rate you're going right now, you got at least another 6 years.
6 years,
before you need to start worrying about it.
6 years. I'll be packed and ready whenever they decide to kick me out.
And yesterday you launched this thing about the roadkill.
Yeah, absolutely.
Roadkill bill. Let's just.
So it's really one of the most misguided. There's been a lot of pieces of legislation that I haven't liked over the years. I didn't like the 43 tax hikes and things that we disagree
After
on.
we were told that it wouldn't happen if we legalized slots.
Yes, that was going to stop.
That was
all
that was a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah, absolutely. But the average Maryland family paid $4,400 more in taxes from those 43 tax hikes during the 8 years, which really hits the average family. But this issue is really one of the worst things I've seen, and nobody's paying much attention to it. But after roads and bridges and transportation were pretty much ignored for 8 years. It's funny, in his last State of the State address, Governor Malley went before the legislature and said we have crumbling roads and bridges and worst traffic in the nation. But he didn't say why. And what happened was, over 8 years, they hadn't fixed a road or a bridge. They didn't invest in transportation. It was not a priority. In fact, there's a trust fund. When they raised the gas tax,
right.
There was a trust fund set up that all that money was supposed to go into it. They robbed or siphoned $1 billion out of the trust fund and spent it on things totally unrelated to transportation.
Which is fairly standard operating procedure. I saw.
Well, it's not anymore.
Well, when I saw the debate, the presidential debate, and he said something, I'm not criticizing, but he said, well, I balance the budget every year. I'm like, well, by law, you have to. And it was done by taking from the transportation trust, which was fairly
But
standard.
even after raising 43 taxes, they still had to rob Peter to pay Paul because they kept spending more.
So we got to let you go here.
Let me just talk on that bill, though, real quick. So
I'm going to cut you off.
So this bill literally kills 90% of all the priority projects in Maryland that we're trying to get done, that all the counties have said that they need to have done, that voters desperately want. And 66 of the most highest priority road and bridge projects in Maryland will be killed unless we repeal this bill. And it has to be done before February 10, or all those projects will be gone. And the legislature keeps arguing and saying they're not going to do it, that we don't know what we're talking about. I mean, it's a fact, and this is a serious issue, and that's why we made it such a important. It's going to be our top priority to get this repealed right away.
So that's the Hogan administration full court press right now.
Yep. We're going to have a few other things that we've got to get to work on, but that one is the pressing one for this week.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. Well, I do want to thank you very much for taking time out of your day to sit down and speak with us.
Yeah, you don't have like friends of the governor cards for like speeding tickets or
tickets? No, we don't have that. We could,
Doug Gansler took them all when he was.
We could probably find some kind of trinkets, but we don't have get out of jail free. Yeah, right. You give me a call though if you get come down and visit you.
Yeah, so what is your number? Just jot that down. Yeah.
I'll give you my card.
But
well, there you go.
It's been great, and we want you to have a great Christmas. And thanks for taking time to have us in your office. It's been fantastic.
Well, thank you very much. Maybe we can do it again sometime. And
sure, when get the calendar out.
I enjoyed it, and I hope you have a great Christmas and happy holidays, and all your listeners do too.
Excellent. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you.
And that was our interview. I thought it was brilliant.
Here's my thing. I thought it would be a lot more formal.
I did too.
I really thought I don't want to say that. I never thought he was, stuffy and but real down to earth. Sat down. I mean, wanted to spend as much time as we could. I know.
Well, our interview with the speaker, I thought was much more formal. I felt like that was.
I agree.
Much more structured, and we were. It was. I felt that while we were there, that was.
I agree. I mean, it was. Come in, sit down. Let's get to it. I mean, Governor Hogan wanted to talk a little bit. Which is kind of neat, much to the chagrin of Hannah, who was sitting there.
I know. I was trying to get.
It's time to wrap up.
Yeah, she's giving me the rap symbol, and I'm trying to get signal, and I'm trying to get him out of there. He's like, "Well, I'm not done." I'm like, "Oh, that's okay. We'll be here all day." I cleared the afternoon.
Who am I to say no?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, he was very nice, very personable. I really liked him. What do you think the difference? I was thinking about this as I was driving home. Is that I'd met Governor O'Malley a couple times. We're not a huge state, so it's not impossible to do that, but. And you're getting that public persona. You and I were talking about this before we were recording this, about the public and private personas of elected officials. That's someone that you might dislike as a politician. For example, I despise Bill Schuster,
right,
in Pennsylvania. I just think he's a scumbag, and he represents everything that's wrong with politics. But if I met him, I'd probably be charmed, because that's how people like that are elected. So. Governor O'Malley, I just thought he was very nice, and we actually grew up in we grew up in the same neighborhood, that same area, that Irish Catholic sort of Montgomery County thing. So I feel like I can relate to him, but I always felt like I just felt it. I'm not saying he did, but I just felt that he was he had this persona that was a stepping stone, that this was a stepping stone to other things, Whereas with Governor Hogan, and maybe it's because I sat down with him and he was able to charm me, I felt that this wasn't a means to an end, but that he was doing this because he really believed in something. And again, I might have got swept up to it because it's the first governor I've ever sat down and talked with. So
I don't know that I'm on board with that. I mean, I've met O'Malley several times. I have he bought me beers at the I say Treaty of Paris, but it was at the Drummer's Lot in the basement of the Maryland Inn one time. I mean, he was always around town. I mean, I've got a picture of him actually that went viral a couple of years ago when he was busking down on City Dock.
Oh yeah,
that was my picture.
But he's a nice guy. I mean, I'm not saying he's not a nice guy. I mean, I certainly is. I just think there's sometimes when I meet elected officials, I feel like I'm being handled, or that that they have their hand on my shoulder and they're saying the exact right things and they're moving on to the next person. And I just didn't get that with Governor Hogan.
I agree with you, and I think I don't know whether O'Malley and his accessibility, if you will, because he was always out on Maryland Avenue, or he's always out on Main Street, just in town. You would see him around. You'd see Katie O'Malley as well, and I don't see Governor Hogan there. But what I got out of this discussion with him was that he's not here to do drinks at Drummer's Lot. He's not here to do this. He's here to do some work.
Well, he said in the interview that this is the whole reason that he got into elected. This is his first elected office, which is astounding. But I mean, he got into this because he was tired of seeing businesses leave Maryland.
Well, it all started with the election of O'Malley, the second term. He turned around and started the Change Maryland Facebook page.
Right.
And he as he said, it grew of Republicans and it grew of Democrats and independents and everything else, and it grew to about 100,000 people. And then he realized he was onto something and said, "Hey, let's turn around and see if we can make something work with it." And he did. He was sued by Anthony Brown for taking a Facebook page and then turning it into a campaign thing. But again, people could make the decision to stay or go.
It's interesting to see a real grassroots organization take place. Like, I would say that the Tea Party was not a grassroots organization as portrayed. That was definitely, and people are going to jump on me. And I'm not saying this is any sort of part. I'm not trying to avoid conflict. But it's a debate I'm not interested in because you're not going to be able to convince me. I believe that was essentially a Fox News creation. I don't think it was deliberate. I think it was just what they created, and so it wasn't real. I feel the same way about Save Annapolis. Save Annapolis was not a grassroots political organization. It was highly manufactured by one person as a means to an end to get something that they wanted. Right. And there people, and one person said to me when I said that on the Eastport forum, she said, "So you're saying that everybody who was involved in that was manipulated and fooled?" And I said, yes, that's what I do believe.
Without a doubt.
I do. And not to say that they didn't believe in it, but I think it was manufactured. That said, to Change Maryland with Governor Hogan, he seems, again, I could be getting fooled, he seems genuine. And when you see a real organization, because that's what he said in the interview, was jobs, jobs, jobs. So when you see a real organization come up with a focused goal and a focused destination, like it seems that he has, I find that interesting, for better, for worse. Even if I don't agree with them, I still, Occupy Wall Street was something that, I didn't necessarily agree with per se, and they didn't seem as focused, but it seems somewhat genuine. Although, someone who's conservative would say, no, that was Sheldon Adelson or whatever. But
they defined the goal, they defined it, they presented it, and they're executing it.
So here's what I found out. So I always made the assumption of, well, let's look at Maryland. So we talked about that. Maryland is, if you look at conservatives, and they're kind of right. My friend Amy, who's in Wisconsin, and she's traveled around the country. She lives in San Diego right now. She said if you had asked her 15 years ago to name states, Maryland would come like 49th or 50th. It's just one of those states. Sure. We live on the East Coast where Maryland is, we know that as it's the center of most. But if you live anywhere else, Maryland is one. It's like Delaware, Maryland, these tiny states. So, but Maryland is the wealthiest state in the country, as I point out all the time, and there's a reason for that. And I always assumed that it was its proximity to Washington D.C. and that there was a lot of largesse that come with it. Because do you know
contributes to it,
some interesting facts? So, what percentage of the state would you assume lives in the Baltimore-Washington corridor, which is the fourth largest in the country, by the way?
What percentage of the state?
Of the state's population?
Probably 40 to 50.
90.
Really?
90% lives in this corridor. So almost virtually the entire
Okay, so that's what Baltimore County, Baltimore City, PG, Anne Arundel, Montgomery,
Yes, Howard. Right.
Okay.
So that's your corridor right there. Maybe Frederick, but I would say no. But so essentially
Probably a slice of Frederick and a slice of Calvert or something
right. So
like
90% live in that population. Now, if you look at what population of public service versus private industry, public employment working for government versus private, what would you think that the government employees would be? And that's
in that corridor.
Right. So that in the state. So you're looking at federal, state, and municipal.
What percentage
of the
population?
Maryland population works for government? I overestimated.
15 or 20?
19.
Okay.
See, I thought it was higher. But, and by the way, I looked these up on Maryland state websites, and every one of those websites were almost defensive about that. Like they wanted to de-emphasize government employees and emphasize more the private industry. But I thought, well, that's kind of telling. So maybe we're not as dependent. But then you think about it's hard to get this number. The ancillary people, those are lobbyists or attorneys or the support the cottage industry that springs. And it's impossible to calculate that.
This goes back to our discussion with Speaker Busch, and you said that what happens if the capital goes away from Annapolis?
Sure.
And what devastation would that have on the city if you're losing the ancillary business, the paper sold at Office Depot, the lobbyists, the people that all depend on that.
Right.
So I mean, there is a lot here, but I mean, you also look at the growth in Northern Virginia. In the I just came back this weekend from North Carolina, and I had not seen what I'm going to call South Alexandria in a long time. I've not come up from the south on 95, but I was just absolutely amazed at the amount of skyscrapers that were in Alexandria. As opposed, I mean, I knew they were always there in Arlington.
So I grew up, like I said, I grew up in Bethesda, so I was across from, not Alexandria, from Arlington. Like I'd come down to Georgetown, so I'd go down Canal Road or whatever, and go past the Whitehurst Freeway, and you look across at Virginia, and now I feel like an old man. We had a cousin who lived out in Vienna, and that was the sticks. There was there was nothing in Northern Virginia. And in Arlington, just like you drive through Arlington at night, and it would be like newspapers blowing down the street, and the lights would be flashing yellow, and that was in the mid '80s. And so here we are 100 years later, and look at how it just exploded. I mean, Northern Virginia is just one solid choke point, and one of those things, sort of like you don't meet anyone who's from Northern Virginia. It's a very transient area, and that's blown up because of government too. So you look at the Baltimore-Washington corridor, and you'd also include Northern Virginia. And by the way, Northern Virginia essentially carries all the economic load for Virginia. So you would also, the argument that we're having here with Maryland, when we're examining, not argument, but the examination we're having of the impact of federal government on Maryland, you would also have that with Northern Virginia. Maryland's a lot smaller than Virginia, and it's a lot more compact. So we're going to have more of it's going to have more of an impact on us. But it was almost 250,000 people in Maryland are employed by the feds. So that's out of 5 million. So I'm not going to do that quick math. But it's like 4, so it's like 6%, something like that. And then 100,000 by the state, and then about almost 150 by local government. So it's pretty significant. And now we have to talk about, like we were just saying, is the number of people who are employed, in the cottage industry around government. So what Hogan was saying, that was kind of interesting, because he emphasized building a strong private sector. I listened to that when we listened to that, I heard him say it over and over. He said, I want to build private sector, I want to build private industry, I want to make a thriving environment for business. And it seems like he's kind of playing a long game with that I don't think he saw emphasized in any other administrations that I could think of, because a lot of them saw the government largesse as something that was permanent, and that's something that was a part of the Maryland industry. And I think he's someone that is trying to make Maryland somewhat recession-proof, and government has made it somewhat recession-proof. But what if President Trump reduces the size of federal government? I don't think he's going to. I think that's yet another campaign promise he can't do. I don't think he's going to reduce it. But let's say he does. That is going to definitely have an impact on Maryland. And so I think you look at Governor Hogan, and he emphasized more than anything is business. Is that because Maryland has been very historically unfriendly to business.
Right. Well, I mean, he cited that the number of businesses that left the state, why they left it, and whatnot. And you look at the paid sick leave bill that he is, spearheading, going through into the next legislative session, where he's sitting there saying that businesses that are over 50 employees are going to be mandated to, pay the paid sick leave 5 days a year, and it's, going to be able to be carried over And we asked candidly, he said, well, is this sort of like a red herring? I mean, how many employers over 50 employees don't pay sick days?
Right.
And he said probably very few,
Right.
but there are some. But he said the real gist of this is the small business, okay, that they're going to get the people that are less than 50 employees are going to get the tax breaks to be able to offer that.
Yeah, and I think
that's going to make business a lot more friendlier.
My brother-in-law explained that to me once. He works in the banking industry, and he was talking about the recession and the order in which everything collapsed, and you never thought about that. So if you look at 2008 is when 2007, because you don't know you're in a recession until
you're in it,
until you're 3 quarters into it, because
right.
it's you have to measure it by 3 quarters. I think it's 3 quarters straight of loss. And so you don't know, you're like, oh, we've been in a recession.
Right, we had a bad quarter.
So that's what happened. So 2008 is when we realized that we'd been in a recession, they were getting crunched. And then when you realize it, it starts to snowball. And what my brother-in-law explained to me, he said, you think in terms of everyone's spending less, so businesses, everyone cuts back and they withdraw. And he goes, it doesn't happen that way. It happens over the period of like 18 months where you have your tier one, which are the businesses start to suffer. But then you have the supply businesses. Those are the ones who are cleaning the buildings, and they say, all right, instead of every day, why don't we'll cut you back to twice a week, or the companies that supply the produce or the seafood for restaurants, well, they start cutting back, and then those people start cutting back on the suppliers, and that goes so it just begins. So it's a domino effect that just affects everything. It takes a long time to fall, and I think that we were insulated by a lot of that, of course, because of the government work and the government reliance cottage industry here. But I think we've always looked at Maryland. Business has always taken a back seat because why do you have to push business? What does it really matter? Because you have the government benefits without any work. It's no one's getting cut back. It's never happened.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, I it's questionable when you say the numbers surprised me when you said that how many people did not, and even though I got it right, did not rely on government workers. I would have thought that would have been higher.
I would have thought it would have been higher too. But especially when I read the first number, that most people weren't living here in the corridor. Yeah. And that was something that goes back to what the speaker was saying, that he was being critical of Governor Hogan to an extent, saying, well, when people in Montgomery County and Prince George's County realize that he's really not paying attention to their needs. And I think he brought up the purple line, and
right.
But first of all, I said this the last one, you can't get elected without 90% of the population. So I mean, Montgomery County and Prince George's County all voted for Hogan, and if he's pushing business, which he is, those are the people that are going to benefit from that. So I don't see that. That benefits those people, and it benefits people in Western Pennsylvania or Western Maryland and the Eastern Shore as well.
Well, I think Hogan has really used the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid. To a degree, because it does fall down to jobs when you look at it. I mean, he is a businessman. He's not a politician. And I don't want to draw any parallels to Trump one here, but I mean, this guy has run a successful small business. I mean, it's not this crazy conglomerate that's doing crazy things, and it's been very successful for very many years. And he understands the need for jobs and what it does. I mean, you create the jobs. I mean, then you've got sales, then you've got marketing, then you've got the ancillary services that all go to support the jobs, and that's what really increases the robust economy. And whether it's on Main Street, or whether it's on a some big industrial park, whether it's Northrop Grumman coming, retaining here in Anne Arundel County. I agree with him. I think that's where it is. It's all about jobs, getting the robust jobs. Everything will sort of follow that.
Well, I think, and this we talked about this before, when you look at the city of Annapolis, and we've been very critical, as everyone has been, about the way that Annapolis lacks any sort of program to push business. I mean, I was on Maryland Ave shopping over the weekend, and I got an earful from a few of the vendors there who were just really upset at the lack of support that they see from the city. Now, that could be just standard. Like, even if they were getting a ton of support, people are always going to complain. But, I mean, we said that there's no incentive for Annapolis to push business forward because they don't get any sort of taste of that, because most of what they generate is going to be from fees and from taxes. And if a business is doing well or it's not, it doesn't matter because the tax is getting paid. When you look at Maryland, it's a different case. Maryland, now, I think...
they got the sales tax.
Yeah, they have the sales tax.
If you got people buying, they're going to be getting more sales tax revenue.
And he was talking, he took on something that he mentioned something that really pissed me off. Not him, but it has pissed me off. It was the 42, was it 37 or 42 taxes that the O'Malley administration pushed forward, which I thought it wasn't even a bait and switch. It was a blatant lie. It was saying, hey, if you do not pass the slots bill or the referendum, then we're going to have to increase all these taxes and fees to cover. Well, so everyone voted to pass the slots bill, and what's the next thing they did is they enacted those taxes and fees anyway. Mm-hmm. I thought that did a lot of damage to the state. I mean, I'm not going to prove it because I'm lazy, but I mean,
it did. I mean, O'Malley. There was the joke about the Capital One. It was like, what's in your wallet? It
was a shitty thing to do. It was, if you don't do this, then we're going to tax you. We did it, and they taxed us. It was, I really resented that as a Marylander, and that's really what turned me sour on the O'Malley administration. I mean, it wasn't solely him, of course.
And of course, it wasn't all taxes. I mean, they called it fees. You call it whatever.
Yeah, and a fee's a tax. That's all. That's what it is. It's
call a spade a spade. One thing that actually Governor Hogan sort of turned my opinion around on, and when I first heard about his support of the Busch, which was the scholarships for students,
right,
in private schools,
which I didn't know a whole lot about. It's sort of like that, and we'll talk about in a second the roadkill bill,
right?
But it was one of those things that you kind of hear bandied about, and you think that it's one you don't pay too much attention. But I found out that's the Boost is the broadening options and opportunities for students today. So basically, it's a voucher bill,
right?
So I think they enacted it.
That's not really a voucher, but it's scholarships. But
okay, so but
it's similar.
Yeah, you're right, voucher. So it was enacted in 2016, launched this year, and it began providing vouchers this year to next year. And it's a school choice program. The state's first provides vouchers to low-income students to attend private schools. So I think the average voucher is around $2,000.
It's about $2,600, and
is it?
And they had $5 million to play with last year. And Hogan wants to expand it to $10 million.
And I think there's 2,500 participating students so far, and 171 participating schools.
Well, my first thought when I heard this was like, wait a minute. Now, if you're spending...
Well, go back and explain this for everybody who doesn't know how the mechanics behind it.
Again, I don't know the specific mechanics of it, but in general, if you're a lower income or if you need assistance, you want to send your child to a private school and you can't afford the private school or they can't afford to give you financial aid or whatever may be there is this program, the Boost program, that you can apply to, and they can give you part of that as a scholarship to go to a private school. Now, this is always a pre-secondary education. So this is elementary, middle, and high school level. It's not college. There's a separate thing for colleges that the delegates and the senators all have. But when I first heard about it, I was like, wait a minute. Any money taken away from public education, I mean, that's where it's got to come from. Education is going to hurt public education.
So zero-sum gain. So a gain somewhere else is a loss somewhere else.
And Governor Hogan explained, said, well, not necessarily, because what you're doing is you're actually helping it out. And this makes sense to a certain degree in that you're easing the burden on public schools.
Right.
It's costing less to educate because you've got fewer students. Public schools. So it is really just sliding it over. So it's not really costing public schools. And that's great. I mean, I think a private school is probably a very good solution for some people. I think it's probably an outstanding solution for some inner city kids, some very underprivileged kids that would get lost in the, lost in the background in some of the larger schools, and we can cite some of the Annapolis area schools.
Well, I think the only thing that he said that kind of raised a flag for me is that and I understood where he was coming from, but maybe it was the way that he framed it. He said, Governor said, if you have a child who's going to a lousy school over here, shouldn't they have a right to get a better education? Which I absolutely agree with. But then what happens to the kids who are left in that lousy school? I think we're saving some kids, but I mean, I want to see these schools fixed. I didn't know this either. We spend more per student in this country than any other nation, industrialized or otherwise.
Yes, I do know that.
Which is shocking to me, is that we get, and I'm not damning the teachers, certainly not. I mean, I think they do a phenomenal job. I just think that our education system...
That's just because they're all your neighbors.
And all Facebook
I like my house and my tires
and
inflated.
My mom and my sisters, they're all teachers, and my mom's
Christmas is coming up.
But I just think that we have to take a long look. Like someone, like anyone else who's untrained in the education system, I'm going to make judgments about them. But I thought about that. That is what he's doing. Is definitely, we said that he's put a flag in many Democratic issues. This is absolutely a Republican issue, because even President Trump's pick for Secretary of Education, it's Betsy DeVos, and I want to talk about this at another episode about his cabinet picks, but. at first I was really irritated that we have someone that's so big on school vouchers and everything. As a matter of fact, I think one on his short list was Michelle Rhee, and I was really excited about that for Secretary of Education because I thought she was awesome. But the school voucher thing, I think I get the point behind it, and I understand why we want to push it. But I just feel like we're content to leave some kids or a lot of kids behind in schools that really need help and that are substandard. So the boost thing I get, and I want to see I think these kids have a right to get a better education, but I worry about the kids that are left behind in these schools in West Baltimore.
Well, if you're able to increase it, I mean, he's doubling it this year. We'll see. I mean, and the argument that the legislature is giving is saying, hey, we have not had a chance really to measure the success of the $5 million program. Why are we increasing it to $10 million? Again,
and I don't know how you measure the success
in this budget. Well, you can. It's a long-term measurement to see where these kids go, how they succeed, where they graduate in their classes, where they go on to. Are they able to, as somebody in a middle school, are they able to go into a private school as a with a scholarship or something? Are they able to get into a top-tier college? Are they looking to go to college? I mean, that's how you measure, and it's going to be a long time before you can. But you turn around and
it's not a lot of money.
No, it's not. But I mean, again, as it gets more successful, as you see that more people are getting into the program, maybe it's having a positive income or a positive impact on the school budgets, the public school budgets. That can be a measure of success as well. And as it grows, if it grows, increase it. That's a way to do it.
Well, the last thing I'll say about that is when you talk about budget, this is where it gets tricky. Is when you're talking about the school budget and how much is spent on schools. This is where when you look at the teachers union, look at how much teachers are paid. So let's say I think our education budget's like what, $1 billion, something like that in the state.
I don't know.
Close to that. Is that if you increase that by 10%, the first thing the teachers would want is a raise, and I totally understand that, and I'm on board with that. But then that makes measuring the increase. What am I trying to say? It makes it difficult to measure any sort of results because that money, it goes to a raise. So it's someone who's doing the job that they are already. They're just being better compensated for it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't. They absolutely should. But then so I think that any increases that you see in education budget moving forward are going to go to salary. And so any shortcomings you have with equipment and facilities and resources, that's always going to exist.
Right.
So anyway.
Hey, and the final thing that he mentioned too was this roadkill bill.
Yep. Which I didn't know anything about. I had to look that up.
Well, it had come right on the day before we met with the governor.
Right.
And what the roadkill bill is last year they decided that they wanted to prioritize the major capital road projects across the state based on a scoring system. And the legislature has said that this is the best way to do it. But what the governor is saying that it's going to negatively impact most, if not all, of the major projects. The widening locally here, the widening of the Severn River Bridge.
They planning on that?
It's on the books.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
The widening of Route 3 down through the whole Crofton corridor,
right, which
totally needs it. And if anybody here is bitching about Forest Drive, go up and drive Crofton.
Yeah, it's pretty
brutal. You'll feel pretty good.
No, I agree with that. That's brutal. But I mean, and his point, he said that in the interview was that President O'Malley, in one of his last speeches going out, was talking about how
President O'Malley.
Did I say President O'Malley?
Yes, you did.
Jesus. But that Governor O'Malley, one of the last speeches he had, he was talking about the crumbling infrastructure of roads and bridges, and he said, and now that's not a priority anymore. So when do you fix these things?
Right.
And this reflects the country in large. That's the bit, and that's what President-elect Trump wants to do. Is that's a big priority for him is the infrastructure, and Congress has said that's not a priority for us.
Yeah, and one of the things too is that the state has been notorious for raiding the transportation fund.
That's what they do every year,
and that's just the cookie jar.
And that's been done. Before Governor Hogan, that was done 12 of 14 years, and that was standard operating procedure.
Sure. You had that through Glendenning, you had that through Ehrlich, you had it through.
When you're balancing the budget, you go automatically to the Transportation Trust, and then you take the money from there, and the budget is balanced.
Right.
And that's when I said that before in the interview. I said with Governor O'Malley, when he said that in the presidential debate, it infuriated me. He said, well, I balanced the budget every year of my governorship. And I was like, but you had to. That was the law that you had to. And you did it because you took the money out of the Transportation Trust. You didn't happen to mention that part.
Right.
And that affects the entire state. But
no, I do think Governor Hogan is spinning this a little bit.
You have to.
Dire. But this is definitely, unequivocally said this is his emergency legislation, and he is going to push to get that bill that was passed last year for the scoring of the projects repealed.
But then going back to our interview with Speaker Busch,
right.
The last thing he said was he was spinning it the other way. He was painting a very dark
picture of the budget.
Going, this is going to be a tough year for Maryland. You know, it's going to be rough. It's going to be so. You can see the battle unfolding right now. Is that this is that
the lines are being drawn,
right? They're being, and actually, I think Democrats are saying, no, we're not killing his ability to fix the infrastructure. We just want him to be able to prioritize, or we want to check the prioritization of how it's done. Or I mean, they're spinning it their own way. So right now, it's one of those things that, depending on the article that I read, that it's either the governor is wrong or it's the legislature is wrong.
Right. The legislature said there's no way it's going to impact the things. Right in the bottom line says, oh yeah, no existing things will be impacted, and the governor says that, well, yeah, no, it will. Wait and see. We'll see how this plays out. I think Governor Hogan has a tough road to get that repealed. When you look at the animosity coming out of the legislature.
Yeah, there seems to be no love lost between the two, and it's can they work together moving forward? I mean, the session starts in a month here, so we'll see what happens moving forward.
We'll see what happens.
And by the way, we're talking about getting together. We're going to have a kind of a not a summit, but open table discussion. We're going to have some newsmakers in here. We're going to extend an invitation out to Kenny Burns, who was a previous episode. Go back and listen to Kenny. And we're going to have a few of. We're going to reach out to some of the local broadcasters and newspaper reporters and radio. We're going to have them, over a few beers. We're going to sit down and we're going to do like a breakdown of the session just to explain the bills and what they mean to everyday Marylanders. And so we're going to do that on a regular basis, probably every few weeks, couple months, and that'll be a fun way to kind of explore stuff that you just kind of see the headline on and never really delve into.
And hear it in real words, not the
exactly.
not the highly edited words or the highly scripted words there. But I do want to say a huge thank you to both Hannah Marr for making this happen, and certainly to Governor Hogan for inviting us into his office.
Yep, he's very gracious.
I promised to bring back the Post-it notes. No need to send the state police over again. Okay, I just thought it was kind of cool with the whole governor thing on the Post-it notes, but yeah, no, and no, I did not steal the Post-it notes from the governor's office. But it was wonderful talking to him. He was so down to earth, he really was.
Yeah.
And we certainly jokingly said, hey, let's do it again. And he says, oh yeah, I'd like to do that. I said, okay, we'll be over at Friday. I think we could do that.
Yeah, we can go back. We're gonna visit him again. A lot of these people we want to kind of touch base with again, and the governor is certainly one of them. He's a lot of fun.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Governor Hogan, Merry Christmas.
Yep.
Merry Christmas to everybody. Thank you very much for listening. And why don't you wrap it up here for us?
So find us on Facebook page and group, and we're going to be on Twitter. So it's the MD Krabs Podcast. You can find John at Annapolis, me at Tim Hamilton 47. You can friend us both on Facebook because we're lonely people and we don't mind it. And we want everyone to have a safe and fun Christmas. And thank you for listening. And
if you celebrate Hanukkah, have a good one of those too.
Oh yeah. We have a lot of our Jewish friends, and they love their Hanukkah.
That's right. And Kwanzaa's, I'm not sure what the dates are for Kwanzaa.
I don't think anyone celebrates that.
Festivus. Yeah.
But this has been a great year for us, and we look forward to moving forward. And you guys have been great. So thank you for helping us like you have. We love each and every one of you. God bless us, everyone.
Goodbye.
This has been the Maryland Krabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them in all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandkrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home. Go.